Sorry about that. I got the lights turned off though. My brother, if you looked at the description box, you saw that my brother interrupted me. He came to the door. I should know how to splice things together, but I don't. I haven't played around with it. So anywho, since I had a little break, I might, like I said, read a little the rest of this chapter, and I think I may even get into the next one. I said, heck, it's Friday night. Might as well, woohoo, party a little bit with some extra reading. How about that? Okay, so we were in chapter 13 about Colin. And she was hoping, they were talking about his crying and stuff. And she didn't want him to, it said she did so want him to forget the garden. And he said, and I read this before, but I'll go back and read this and then we'll get back into it. I dare say, he answered, let us talk about something else. Talk about that garden. Don't you want to see it? Trying to get rid of this bookmark so I can, there we go. Don't you want to see it? Yes, answered Mary in quite a low voice. I do, he went on persistently. I don't think I ever really wanted to see anything before, but I want to see that garden. Of course he would. I want the key dug up. I want the door unlocked. I would let them take me there in my chair. That would be getting fresh air. I'm going to make them open the door. He had become quite excited, and his strange eyes began to shine like stars and look more immense than ever. They have to please me, he said. I'll make them take me there, and I'll let you go too. Mary's hands clutched each other. Everything would be spoiled. Everything. Dickon would never come back. She would never again feel like a missile thrush with a safe hidden nest. Oh, don't do that, she cried out. He stared as if he thought she had gone crazy. Why? He exclaimed. You said you wanted to see it. I do, she answered almost with a sob in her throat, but if you make them open the door and take you in like that, it will never be a secret again. He leaned still farther forward. A secret, he said. What do you mean? Tell me. Mary's words almost tumbled over one another. You see, she panted, if no one knows but ourselves, if there was a door hidden somewhere under the ivy, if there was, and we could find it, and if we could slip through it together and shut it behind us, and no one knew anyone was inside, and we called it our garden and pretended that we were missile thrushes and it was our nest. And if we played there almost every day and dug and planted seeds and made it all come alive. Is it dead? He interrupted her. It soon will be if no one cares for it, she went on. The bulbs will live, but the roses... He stopped her again, as excited as she was herself. What are bulbs? He put in quickly. They're daffodils and lilies and snowdrops. They're working in the earth now, pushing up pale green points because the spring is coming. Is the spring coming? He said. What is it like? You don't see it in rooms if you're ill. It's the sun shining on the rain, and it's raining here now. It's a thunderstorm. I was about to be afraid I was going to be without my internet. Cross your fingers. I lost power for a little bit last night. I was trying to get that's about said squirrel. That possum that's still in my kitchen cabinet. let's see, sunshine on the rain, rain falling on the sunshine. You don't see it. It is the sun shining on the rain and the rain falling on the sunshine, things pushing up and working under the earth, said Mary. If the garden was a secret and we could get into it, we could watch the things grow bigger every day and see how many roses are alive. Don't you see? Oh, don't you see how much nicer it would be if it was a secret? He dropped back on his pillow and lay there with an odd expression on his face. I never had a secret, he said, except that one about not living to grow up. They don't know I know that, so it is sort of a secret. But I like this kind better. If you won't make them take you to the garden, pleaded Mary, perhaps I feel almost sure I can find out how to get in sometime, and then if the doctor wants you to go out in your chair, and if you always do what you want to do, perhaps we might find some boy who would push you. And we could go alone, and it would always be a secret garden. I should like that, he said very slowly. His eyes looked dreamy. I should like that. I should not mind fresh air in a secret garden. Mary began to recover her breath and feel safer because the idea of keeping the secret seemed to please him. She felt almost sure that if she kept on talking and could make him see the garden in his mind as she had seen it, he would like it so much that he could not bear to think that everybody might tramp into it when they chose. I'll tell you what I think it would be like if we could go into it, she said. It has been shut up so long, things have grown into a tangle, perhaps. He lay quite still and listened while she went on talking about the roses which might have clambered from tree to tree and hung down, about the many birds which might have built their nests there because it was so safe. And then she told him about the robin and Ben Weatherstaff. And there was so much to tell about the robin, and it was so easy and safe to talk about it that she ceased to be afraid. The robin pleased him so much that he smiled until he looked almost beautiful. And at first Mary had thought that he was even plainer than herself with his big eyes and heavy locks of hair. Excuse me, pain in my head. Woo! I did not know birds could be like that, he said. Sorry. That's weird. She did not know what to say, so she did not say anything. He evidently did not expect an answer, and the next moment he gave her a surprise. I'm going to let you look at something, he said. Do you see that rose-colored silk curtain hanging on the wall over the mantelpiece? If y'all have seen the movie, you know what's coming next. Mary had not noticed it before, but she looked up and saw it, or maybe you've read the book. I know Liliana has. It was a curtain of soft silk hanging over what seemed to be some sort of picture. Yes, she answered. There's a cord hanging from it, said Colin. Go and pull it. Mary got up, much mystified, and found the cord. When she pulled it, the silk curtain ran back on rings, and when it ran back, it uncovered a picture. It was the picture of a girl with a laughing face. She had bright hair tied up with a blue ribbon, and her gay, lovely eyes were exactly like Colin's unhappy ones. Agate gray and looking twice as big as they really were because of the black lashes all around them. Guess who that was? Yep. She is my mother, said Colin complainingly. I don't see why she died. Sometimes I hate her for doing it. How queer, said Mary. If she had lived, I believe I should not have always been ill, he grumbled. I dare say I should have lived too. And my father would not have hated to look at me. I dare say I should have a strong back. Draw the curtain again. Mary did as she was told and returned to her footstool. She's much prettier than you, she said, but her eyes are just like yours. At least they are the same shape and color. Why is the curtain drawn over her? He moved uncomfortably. I made them do it, he said. Sometimes I don't like to see her looking at me. She smiles too much when I'm ill and miserable. Besides, she's mine, and I don't want everyone to see her. There were a few moments of silence, and then Mary spoke. What would Mrs. Medlock do if she found out I had been in here? She inquired. She would do as I told her to do, he answered, and I should tell her that I wanted you to come here and talk to me every day. I'm glad you came. So am I, said Mary. I'll come as often as I can, but I shall have to, she hesitated, I shall have to look every day for the garden door. Yes, you must, said Colin, and you can tell me about it afterward. He lay thinking a few minutes, as he had done before, and then he spoke again. I think you shall be a secret too, he said. I will not tell them until they find out. I can always send the nurse out of my room and say that I want to be by myself. Do you know Martha? Yes, I know her very well, said Mary. She waits on me. He nodded his head toward the outer corridor. She is the one who is asleep in the other room. The nurse went away yesterday to stay all night with her sister, and she always makes Martha attend to me when she wants to go out. Martha shall tell you when to come here. Then Mary understood Martha's troubled look when she had asked questions about the crying. Martha knew about you all the time, she said. Yes. It's thundering. Can you hear it? It's not real loud. Let's see. She often attends me. The nurse likes to get away from me, and then Martha comes. I've been here a long time, said Mary. Shall I go away now? Your eyes look sleepy. I wish I could go to sleep before you leave me, he said rather shyly. Shut your eyes, said Mary, drawing her footstool closer, and I will do what my ayah used to do in India. I will pat your hand and stroke it and sing something quite low. I should like that, perhaps, he said drowsily. Somehow she was sorry for him and did not want him to lie awake. So she leaned against the bed and began to stroke and pat his hand and sing a very low little chanting song in Hindustani of Hindu-like Hindustani. That is nice, he said more drowsily still, and she went on chanting and stroking. But when she looked at him again, his black lashes were lying close against his cheeks, for his eyes were shut and he was fast asleep. So she got up softly, took her candle, and crept away without making a sound. And that's the end of chapter 13. But I told you, since I had a little break, we'll go on to chapter 14. Let me see real quick just how long it is. It's pretty long. Oh, I hate to leave in the middle of a chapter, but gee whiz, that's long. I don't think I'll get all that read, but we'll see what we can do. Well, now I got to get back. Scroll, 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 scroll. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Good grief. Okay, chapter 14 is called A Young Rajah. The moor was hidden in mist when the morning came and the rain had not stopped pouring down. There could be no going out of doors. Martha was so busy that Mary had no opportunity of talking to her, but In the afternoon, she asked her to come and sit with her in the nursery. She came, bringing the stocking she was always knitting when she was doing nothing else. "What's the matter with thee?" she asked as soon as she sat down. "Thou looks as if thou'd something to say." "I have. I found out what the crying was," said Mary. Martha let her knitting drop on her knee and gazed at her with startled eyes. "Thou hasn't," she exclaimed. "Never." "I heard it in the night," Mary went on, "and I got up and I went to see where it came from. It was calling. I found him." "Ah, Miss Mary," she said, half crying, "thou shouldn't have done it. Thou shouldn't. Thou'll get me in trouble. I never told thee nothing about him, and thou'll get me in trouble. I shall lose my place, and what'll mother do?" "You won't lose your place," said Mary. "He was glad I came. We talked and talked, and he said he was glad I came." "Was he?" cried Martha. "Art thou sure?" "Thou doesn't know what he's like when anything vexes him. He's a big lad to cry like a baby, but when he's in a passion, he'll fair scream just to frighten us. He knows us daren't call our souls our own." "He wasn't vexed," said Mary. "I asked him if I should go away, and he made me stay. He asked me questions, and I sat on a big footstool and talked to him about India and about the robin and gardens. He wouldn't let me go. He let me see his mother's picture. Before I left him, I sang him to sleep." Martha fairly gasped with amazement. "I can scarcely believe thee," she protested. "It's as if thou'd walked straight into a lion's den. If he'd been like he is most times, he'd have thrown himself into one of his tantrums and roused the house. He won't let strangers look at him." "He let me look at him. I looked at him all the time, and he looked at me. We stared," said Mary. "I don't know what to do," cried agitated Martha. "If Mrs. Medlock finds out, she'll think I broke orders and told thee, and I shall be packed back to Mother." "He's not going to tell Mrs. Medlock anything about it yet. It's to be sort of a secret just at first," said Mary firmly. "And he says everybody is obliged to do as he pleases." "Aye, that's true enough, the bad lad," sighed Martha, wiping her forehead with her apron. "He says Mrs. Medlock must, and he wants me to come and talk to him every day. And you are to tell me when he wants me. "Me," said Martha. "I shall lose my place. I shall for sure." "You can't if you're doing what he wants you to do, and everybody is ordered to obey him," Martha argued. "Does I mean to say," cried Martha with wide open eyes, "that he was nice to thee?" "Then I think he almost liked me," Mary answered. "Then thou must have bewitched him," decided Martha, drawing a long breath. "Do you mean magic?" inquired Mary. "I've heard about magic in India, but I can't make it. I just went into his room, and I was so surprised to see him, I stood and stared, and then he turned around and stared at me. And he thought I was a ghost or dream, and I thought perhaps he was, and it was so queer being there alone together in the middle of the night and not knowing about each other. And we began to ask each other questions, and when I asked him if I must go away, he said I must not." The world's coming to an end," gasped Martha. "What's the matter with them?" asked Mary. "Nobody knows for sure and certain," said Martha. "Mr. Craven went off his head like when he was born. The doctors thought he'd have to be put in an asylum. It was because Mrs. Craven died, like I told you. He wouldn't set eyes on the baby. He just raved and said it'd be another hunchback like him, and it'd better die. Is Colin a hunchback? Mary asked. He didn't look like one. He isn't yet, said Martha, but he began all wrong. Mother said there was enough trouble and raging in the house to set any child wrong. They was afraid his back was weak, and they've always been taking care of it, keeping him lying down and not letting him walk. Once they made him wear a brace, but he fretted so he was downright ill. Then a big doctor came to see him and made them take it off. He talked to the other doctor quite rough, in a polite way. How you do that? He said there'd been too much medicine and too much letting him have his own way. Excuse me. I think he's a very spoiled boy, said Mary. He's the worst young knout as ever was, said Martha. I won't say as he hasn't been ill a good bit. He's had coughs and colds that's nearly killed him 2 or 3 times. Once he had rheumatic fever, and once he had typhoid. Aye, Mrs. Medlock did get a fright then. He'd been out of his head, and she was talking to the nurse, thinking he didn't know nothing, and she said, he'll die this time, sure enough, and best thing for him and for everybody. Oh, she said about him dying, and best thing for him and for everybody. And she looked at him, and there he was with his big eyes open, staring at her, as sensible as she was herself. She didn't know what happened, but he just stared at her and says, you give me some water and stop talking. You think he'll die? Asked Mary. Mother says there's no reason why any child should live that gets no fresh air and doesn't do nothing but lie on his back and read picture books and take medicine. He's weak and hates the trouble of being out of doors, and he gets cold so easy he says it makes him ill. Mary sat and looked at the fire. I wonder, she said slowly, if it would not do him good to go out into a garden and watch things growing. It did me good. One of the worst fits he ever had, said Martha, was one time they took him out where the roses is by the fountain. He had been reading in a paper about people getting something he called rose cold. And he began to sneeze and said he got it. And then a new gardener, as didn't know the rules, passed by and looked at him curious. He threw himself into a passion, and he said he had looked at him because he was going to be a hunchback. He cried himself into a fever and was ill all night. If he ever gets angry at me, I'll never go and see him again, said Mary. He'll have thee if he wants thee, said Martha. Thou may as well know that at the start. Very soon afterward a bell rang, and she rolled up her knitting. I dare say the nurse wants me to stay with him a bit, she said. I hope he's in a good temper. She was out of the room about 10 minutes and then came back with a puzzled expression. Well, thou has bewitched him, she said. He's up on his sofa with his picture books. He's told the nurse to stay away until 6 o'clock. I'm to wait in the next room. The minute she was gone, he called me to him and says, I want Mary Lennox to come and talk to me. And remember, you're not to tell anyone. You better go as quick as you can. Mary was quite willing to go quickly. She did not want to see Colin as much as she wanted to see Dickon, but she'd wanted to see him very much. There was a bright fire on the hearth when she entered the room, and in daylight she saw it was a very beautiful room indeed. There were rich colors in the rugs, and hangings, and pictures, and books on the walls, which made it look glowing and comfortable, even in spite of the gray sky and falling rain. Colin looked rather like a picture himself. He was wrapped in a velvet dressing gown and set against a big brocaded cushion. He had a red spot on each cheek. Come in, he said. I've been thinking about you all morning. I've been thinking about you too, answered Mary. You don't know how frightened Martha is. She says Mrs. Medlock will think she told me about you and then she'll be sent away. He frowned. Go and tell her to come here, she said. She's in the next room. Mary went and brought her back. Poor Martha was shaking in her shoes. Colin was still frowning. Have you to do what I please, or have you to do what I please, or have you not? He demanded. I have to do what you please, sir, Martha faltered, turning quite red. Has Medlock to do what I please? Everybody has, sir, said Martha. Well, then, if I order you to bring Miss Mary to me, how can Medlock send you away if she finds it out? Please don't let her, sir, pleaded Martha. I'll send her away if she dares to say a word about such a thing, said Master Craven grandly. She wouldn't like that, I can tell you. Thank you, sir, bobbing a curtsy. I want to do my duty, sir. What I want is your duty, said Colin more grandly still. I'll take care of you. Now go away. When the door closed behind Martha, Colin found Mistress Mary gazing at him as if he had set her to wondering. Why do you look at me like that? He asked her. What are you thinking about? I'm thinking about 2 things. What are they? Sit down and tell me. Well, this is the first one, said Mary, seating herself on the big stool. Once in India, I saw a boy who was a Rajah. He had rubies and emeralds and diamonds stuck all over him. He spoke to his people just as you spoke to Martha. Everybody had to do everything he told them. In a minute, I think they would have been killed if they hadn't. I shall make you tell me about Rajahs presently, he said. But first tell me what the second thing was. I was thinking, said Mary, how different you are from Dickon. Who was Dickon? He said. What a queer name. She might as well tell him. She thought she could talk about Dickon without mentioning the secret garden. She'd like to hear Martha talk about him. Besides, she longed to talk about him. It would seem to bring him nearer. He's Martha's brother. He's 12 years old, she explained. He is not like any other else in the world. He can charm foxes and squirrels and birds, just as the natives in India charm snakes. He plays a very soft tune on a pipe, and they come and listen. There were some big books on a table at his side, and he dragged one suddenly toward him. There's a picture of a snake charmer in this, he exclaimed. Come and look at it. The book was a beautiful one with superb colored illustrations, and he turned to one of them. Can he do that? He asked eagerly. He played on his pipe, and they listened, Mary explained. But he doesn't call it magic. He says it's because he lives on the moor so much that he knows their ways. He says he feels sometimes as if he was a bird or a rabbit himself. He likes them so. I think he asked the robin questions. It seemed as if they talked to each other in soft chirps. Colin lay back on his cushion and his eyes grew larger and larger, and the spots on his cheeks burned. Tell me some more about him, he said. Excuse me. He knows all about eggs and nests, Mary went on, and he knows where foxes and badgers and otters live. He keeps them secret so that other boys won't find their holes and frighten them. He knows about everything that grows or lives on the moor. Does he like the moor? Said Colin. How can he when he's such a great bare dreary place? It's the most beautiful place, protested Mary. Thousands of lovely things grow on it, and there are thousands of little creatures all busy building nests and making holes and burrows and chippering or singing or squeaking to each other. They're so busy and having such fun under the earth or in the trees or heather. It's their world. How do you know all that? Said Colin, turning on his elbows to look at her. I haven't never been there once, really, said Mary, suddenly remembering. I only drove over in the dark. I thought it was hideous. Martha told me about it first, then Dickon. When Dickon talks about it, you feel as if you saw things and heard them, and as if you were standing in the heather with the sun shining, and the gorse smelling like honey, and all full of bees and butterflies. You never see anything if you're ill, said Colin restlessly. He looked like a person listening to a new sound in the distance and wondering what it was. You can't if you stay in the room, said Mary. I couldn't go on the moor, he said in a resentful tone. Mary was silent for a moment, then she said something bold. You might sometime. He moved as if he were startled. Go on the moor? How could I? I'm going to die. Some 14-year-old is saying. I'm going to read a little bit more, then I'm going to have to stop because I'm getting a sore throat. It's this sinus stuff again. How do you know? Said Mary unsympathetically. She didn't like the way he had of talking about dying. She did not feel very sympathetic. She felt rather as if he almost boasted about it. Oh, I've heard it ever since I remember, he answered crossly. They're always whispering about it and thinking I don't notice. They wish I would, too. Wish you would die. Mistress Mary felt quite contrary. She pinched her lips together. If they wished I would, she said. I wouldn't. Who wishes you would? The servants, and of course Dr. Craven, because he would get Misselthwaite and be rich instead of poor. He daren't say so, but he always looks cheerful when I am worse. When I had typhoid fever, his face got quite fat. I think my father wishes it too. It's terrible. I don't believe he does, said Mary quite obstinately. That made Colin turn and look at her again. Don't you? He said. Then he lay back on his cushion and was still as if he were thinking. And there was quite a long silence. Perhaps they were both of them thinking strange things. Children do not usually think. I like the grand doctor from London because he made them take the iron thing off, said Mary at last. Did he say you were going to die? No. What did he say? He didn't whisper, Colin answered. Perhaps he knew I hated whispering. I heard him say one thing quite aloud. He said, the lad might live if he would make up his mind to it. Put him in the humor. It sounded as if he was in a temper. I'll tell you who would put you in humor, perhaps, said Mary, reflecting. And you know who that is. She felt as if she would like this thing to be settled one way or the other. I believe Dickon would. He's always talking about live things. He never talks about dead things or things that are ill. He's always looking up in the sky to watch birds flying or looking down at the earth to see something growing. He has such round blue eyes and they're so wide open with looking about. And he laughs such a big laugh with his wide mouth, and his cheeks are as red as cherries. She pulled her stool nearest to the sofa. and her expression quite changed at the resemblance of the wide curving mouth and wide open eyes. "See here," she said, "don't let us talk about dying. I don't like it. Let us talk about living. Let us talk about Dickon, and then we will look at your pictures." And we are still on chapter 14, but come on. Remember we said pictures last. Try to back this thing again. Come on. I don't know why I can get this sometimes, and sometimes it's a pain in the butt. There we go. Okay, so the last thing we said, and then we will look at your pictures. Help me remember that. I got it bookmarked here, but sometimes bookmarks do weird stuff. Whoa. It just went flying down. Okay, we'll leave it right there. Okay, Squirrel Squad, that's it. Have a lovely what's left of your Friday night. Here in the eastern part of the U.S., it is 9:32-ish. And it's raining, thundering a little bit in the background. Boy, was it hot today. Boy, was it hot today. So, I'm hoping this rain will cool things off a little bit. You might tell me in the comments how it is where you are. How's the weather? And how you liking the book? Anything you'd like to say? I've gotten lots of people trying to tell me how to get Opie out of the cabinet. I've done most everything I know. He's got Vine weenies, crunched up, mushed up, and cat food in a little cup with the juice. I'm hoping and praying when I go in there in the kitchen and open that cabinet door, he's going to be right there so he can jump in that crate. Cindy Suttles of Cindy Hart's Crochet said her Ellie Mae self, I'm putting this in my own words, was coming up here. I believe she's in Alabama, Cindy? I'm always getting folks mixed up, but I want to say she's in Alabama. So I said, come on. Come on to help GrannyDee. I don't want the little thing to starve. But I don't want to put the food in there. He's doing his business in my cabinets. It's starting to smell a little gamey up here. Have to keep Febrezing. Okay. Love to you all, my sweet Katarina. Linda Jean's little baby girl that's 2, coming up on 3. And she was so excited a while ago. Linda said she gave her phone. I guess she was looking at me on her phone, a big, juicy, sloppy kiss. Linda was trying to clean her phone off. It's something about, I believe she said she was calling her daddy to tell her Granny Sweet had called her name. Bless her heart. It's so wonderful to have a little youngin' as your #1 fan. I just think that's the sweetest thing ever. Love to the manager. Love to all my family. Love to you guys as always. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Me too. Night night.